young man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
Boom. New camera resolution, baby. That's right. We're upgrading slowly, but surely. I hope you guys like the new camera thing. Anybody notices anything go astray, let me know. Not that I necessarily can do anything about it, but maybe I can. Who knows? So, yeah, we are here. It is another Friday. Now, next Friday, no stream because I will be in Arizona and I'm not going to stream from Arizona as much as I like Arizona. I like Arizona so much. I'm not going to take time out to stream from Arizona. But hopefully, and you guys can let me know this new camera thing is working out okay. I couldn't get it exactly framed the way I wanted, but that's okay. It looks good. At some point, maybe we'll get a better camera. It might be time to upgrade, but this should be higher resolution and the framing's all right. It's not great, but it's better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. You know how that would feel. So yeah, it's been an interesting week. There's some weird stuff out there. A lot of people I think are oscillating between sounding perfectly sane and totally insane at the same time. I did a couple of videos, which I managed to fail to schedule. But I will schedule them tomorrow before I leave for Arizona to see the Grand Canyon. Should be great. So, yeah, I mean, I've got my Sampel. I hope you guys have some suitable beverage for the pirate journey. And of course, I got my Muppet mug. Have you considered? You should. You should consider. Super important. And I've got some basically ginger lemon Manuka honey tea in the captain's mug. Quite good. Very good. Still a little warm, of course. That's okay. It's supposed to steep. And then in the skull mug, we have some Westminster from Table Rock Tea Company. Table Rock is awesome, and their teas are great. So let's grab our favorite book here, which should be nice and crisp. Apparently, thank you, Noah, and see what wisdom that Taleb has. This is from Ethics. If you lie to me, keep lying. Don't hurt me by suddenly telling the truth. Well, yeah, that's a trap a lot of people get into. Once you go down that lane, you're kind of stuck. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. And yeah, so we're going down this path: attention, feeling, we're on feeling, care, compassion, and love. It's going to take us a long time to get through this because I'm going to lose 2 more Fridays coming up. Maybe not. Maybe I'll do a live stream on the road. I don't know. I could do one of the Fridays potentially. So yeah. Feeling is really important because everyone's confused about this. because people have been told the wrong thing and they've understood the word the wrong way. And we kind of have to discipline ourselves and fix the language a little bit. So if we go with actual definitions, you realize that people talk about emotions and feelings completely inverted, right? So emotions are on the inside of you and feelings are on the outside, basically. And so the thing you control is not your emotions, you control your feelings, which is the expression of your emotions, among other things, right? Feelings can also cause emotions, like put your hand on a hot stove. Your emotion might be one of sadness when you realize you're burning. So it's important to understand that there is this reciprocal relationship. In other words, feelings affect emotions and emotions can create and affect feelings. Right. And so there's a reason why people can not experience pain when there's clearly, skin bubbling up, because I've seen people do that. I control my pain quite well. I've spilled boiling water on myself a number of times and just not flinched because I can do that. Of course, I trained myself to do that. So, I also don't like doing it because I feel like pain sucks. It's hot water on your skin is really not great. By the way, if you ever get any kind of hot water on your skin, the right answer is always to go immediately to some cold water and run the cold water over the skin as quickly as you possibly can, but very slowly, right, to extricate yourself from the hot water situation, lest you make it worse, which is why it's important to control how you feel. So, what I want to get across here is that feeling is related to your intuition, right? And the interpretation of emotions. Okay. That's not all it is, right? But it's related to those two things. I have a bad feeling about this. Oh, you do. Oh, you're referring to your intuition, right? You're not referring to an emotional state necessarily, right? A bad feeling is just this unmoored, ungrounded thing that you notice maybe emotionally you're unsettled or something, maybe. But feeling ultimately is something that you can get as a result of an action in the world or an emotion from inside yourself. That makes feeling the external mediator of your internal state, right? And a mediator can go both ways. In this case, it goes both ways, right? Something outside of you can make you sad. You can feel sad and project that outside of you. Both work, right? Those are your feelings. That's what you have access to in other people. What you don't have access to in other people is their emotion. Hopefully they're mediating their emotions with their feelings. We'll go into that. And so that makes the more fundamental grounded thing emotion, and the mediator is the feeling. And of course, we're not going to talk about emotion today, right? Um, because that's not what this live stream is about. Uh, and also, I think it's kind of dangerous to talk too much about emotion, but I'll leave that there. But note that these interactions in the outside world are the feelings that impact you, right, and cause emotional state changes. So it's really important to realize that. I understand it's very confusing because people often talk about emotional control. They mean get control over how you're feeling. They don't mean get control over your emotions. That's ridiculous. You don't control your emotions. Your emotions control you. Emotions drive everything you do or don't do for that matter, right? Fear can drive you not to act. Oh, I'm afraid of the telephone, which I still am. And therefore, I won't leave a message, which I did today. Uh, I had a way out and it worked out fine. Actually, way better than I expected. So it was a good phone call, despite the fact that it didn't go the way I wanted it to in the beginning. But what that means is that you're not controlling your emotions, but you can control your feelings. You can control how something makes you feel. And this is what the Stoics used to do, right? well, we sort of misunderstand the Stoics nowadays as like suppressing or reducing their emotions, or um, you know, making sure they don't have emotions, like squeezing them out or whatever, right? But they're not. They're building up pressure on the inside and just not manifesting it on the outside, but it never goes away. So more pressure builds up, right? The Stoics don't think you can suppress or reduce or understand or know your emotions. They don't think so, right? They're controlling the interpretation of emotions. In other words, well, if something happens that doesn't involve you, there's not much you can do about it. So maybe you can feel bad for the other person, but maybe there's no action you can take. I feel bad for the people of Iran. There's not much I can do, though. I still feel bad when I think about it. Fair enough. Like, you should feel bad. Like, that's horrible. All the suffering they've been through, either before, during, or after the war, makes no difference. It's terrible. And sure, like there are past events that shaped how you interpret pretty much everything, right? Because proper formation causes maturity, which results in control of your feelings, not your emotions. You don't control your emotions. Your emotions control you. Because you control what you do about your emotions. Oh, I feel angry, but I'm not going to hit him. Okay. Well, that's probably good. Right? So it's important to differentiate these things and understand their relationship, because people are confused. We've reduced emotions into feelings and sort of use them interchangeable almost. And we can't do that. Like that's not functional. So it's a big problem. So let me give you an example, which I stole, of course. Um, there were a lot of people who felt like Charlie Kirk was a bad guy and he needed to be murdered. And others at the same time now feel like he's a martyr, which is weird. Like, how do we have two, fundamentally conflicting attitudes about this within the same civilization or society? It's kind of weird, right? But how you view that event and what emotions arise in you is very telling. Not only to how mature you are, right? Because ultimately, no one should know which side of that equation I'm on. No one, right? How you emotionally feel about Charlie Kirk just shouldn't be on display. What should be on display is your feeling of sadness because someone is dead. Period. End of statement. And that's maturity, is other people's inability to tell what your emotional state is, to some extent, is maturity, except when you want them to, right? Like you just don't want to gush about things. You don't want to be over the top about things. Excuse me. And a lot of people have problems with this. I understand that. It's called immaturity, among other things. Some people are going to have emotions that always get the better of them. Like everybody has that problem. And when you let your emotional state sort of drive your feelings and you express that publicly, because that's what feelings are, they're public to some extent, right? You betray your worldview. Like either you're a crazy person who thinks that people talking should be murdered. That's crazy, by the way. Or you're a crazy person who thinks that because of who he was and maybe a thing or two that he said, that somehow that qualifies him for martyrdom. That's also crazy. I just they're both crazy. I'm sorry. They're both extremes of craziness. They just are. I shouldn't know which side of that spectrum you fall on. I don't want to know. I'm not terribly interested which type of crazy you are, because when you're in public, even if you are crazy, it helps if you don't display your craziness. It's that simple. So feelings are the outside of the person, while emotions are hidden, often, unfortunately, even to yourself. And that's going to be important to realize. If you're not properly expressing your emotions through your feelings, you won't know what your emotions are doing when certain things happen. So if you've been repressing your feelings this whole time, you're screwing yourself. You're not protecting other people, but you're screwing yourself. And so maybe this will cause a little bit of controversy, but I feel like I have to kind of point this out. Feelings are sort of defined or well known, or sometimes they call them emotions, but actually I would say it's feelings because feelings you have some control over. They're pretty much defined as the thing that override rationality. Like they're in conflict. They're fighting for the same resources over your body or something. Something. It's hard to say really how these people talk. And this is key to understand. Emotions, which can cause feelings, are not the only thing that cause feelings, right? Hot stove, gonna cause you some feelings, are not mapped to one side of the brain or other. It's not some opponent processing where there's emotions over here and there's rationality over here. That didn't happen. Excuse me. And so there's no mappable difference in the brain that they've found and they've looked, right? I mean, I looked this up. I do my research, right? That would say that dichotomy exists anywhere in your head. But I'm telling you, there is a contest there, but I think the contest is one of control. You don't want to be overly rational and you don't want to be overly emotional, right? And so your feelings are the way you manage that. Maybe it's not the only way you manage that, but it's certainly one way that you manage that. And the thing is, emotions are not the enemy. They are vital because your intuition is vital. And if you're not in touch with the subtle cues that your unconscious mind has access to, and your conscious mind is a little, off in space, actually, then you're missing a bunch of information about the world, about the whole entire world and everything going on around you. And more importantly, other people. It's very hard to map that other people have feelings if you're not in touch with your own. And then you won't even notice what their feelings are because you either think they're repressing them or you think that they should be repressing them, or you say, well, they are repressing them, but I still see them, so they must be much worse or whatever. Like it's nonsense calculations. So let's harken back to my earlier example. Even if you hate someone for purely made up reasons, your inability to express sadness at the death of another person, right? Or your certainty that while this is sad, it is ultimately going to be okay, which is not clear at all, by the way. So we've already kind of seen the breakdown of that whole narrative. That's a lack of maturity. It's a lack of maturity. You have to be able to experience the sadness of loss of an innocent life. Mourning matters. And presuming might be required, right? But no one has to be made aware of your presumptions. Oh, he deserved it. Okay. That's a weird thing to tell. Signals matter. I'm not saying you should never say that about anyone ever, but I have a hard case with Charlie Kirk making an argument that somebody who was trucking on college campuses needed to be shot. So, and perhaps you're going to see this as an aside, but I don't think it is. I'm trying to demonstrate the larger principle here. Seeing Charlie Kirk's murder as okay only really be justified if you think that words are violence. thereby justifying the violence required to silence him. Period. End of statement. There are no other reasons, guys. None. There's no other line of reasoning available to you. And this is what I've been pointing out, in the past. This is the age of gnosis. Propositions as the highest value because they represent knowledge. And that knowledge is violent. It can do you harm. These words that people are using, that's your propositional tyranny, right? Dr. Vakey wasn't wrong about that part of it. That's your propositional tyranny right there. In the propositional tyranny, a person like Charlie Kirk is going to get this, he deserved it, he's a martyr dichotomy immediately, right? And no one's going to stop to think, how did that happen? How could somebody just talking to people on college campus be considered a martyr? Like, what? I mean, come on. Like, at a certain point, right? Because those same people will say, well, it's just words and he shouldn't have to die for his words. Okay, well, it's just words. And like, what distinguishes his words and his method of delivery from anyone else's? They're both age of gnosis people. Like, they're not, one's not overly stuck in the age of gnosis and the other ones are fine. No, that didn't happen. Super important, right? So if you're some kind of weird evangelical, you might try to justify the murder of some force for good with it being ultimately good in the end. And that's where you get the martyrdom from. Either way, though, you're a crazy extremist, you're stuck in the age of gnosis, and you're absolutely wrong. Sorry. It's not my fault. If you don't want to be wrong, stop being wrong. There's nothing I can do about that. Also, you have betrayed your entire worldview. You're a crazy fundamentalist if you think he's a martyr, or you're a crazy extreme leftist if you think he deserved it. But both nuts. They were cray. Both fundamental ideas, by the way. They're both fundamentalism based in the age of gnosis. Because fundamentalism is based in the age of gnosis. Hopefully you can see that. And that's why your feelings, your mediation, I wouldn't know your worldview. I'd be like, oh, okay, well, this person doesn't seem crazy. Which is, it's better to signal less crazy. And don't pull the forbidden knowledge on me. Forbidden knowledge is good. Plato said so. Read the Republic correctly. Now, don't mistake this. This is not some call to deal harshly with your feelings or your emotions. They need to be integrated, right? So maybe you hide them in public, you hide your emotions in public so that you put on a good face publicly. You not get too fundamentalist one way or the other, so that other people don't mirror that behavior, because mimicry is a real issue. Right? And everything needs to be integrated so that important signal from within you, your emotion, gets integrated with the outside world via the feelings, the mediator. If this isn't done properly, you cannot learn about you. You cannot communicate properly to others, especially when you need help. And it's hard for others to know what matters to you, which means they will inadvertently treat you badly and you'll have only yourself to blame. Children, when they're young and they bump their head, they typically cry a lot more than is warranted. They're not mediating their feelings, right? Maybe bumping your head set off a negative emotion, and that negative emotion reverberated back to your feelings, and then you felt your head throbbing more, and then that fed back to your emotions, and now you have more negative emotions and you cry louder, even though, as everybody knows, if you bump your head, typically it hurts a lot more in the beginning, and that signal wanes, it dissipates, It attenuates over time. So you can, I mean, this happened. This is a real world thing, right? I'm not making this up. So the feelings are feeding back to the emotions in a negative cycle and increasing everything, amplifying everything. That's not great. I don't think it's necessarily avoidable either, until you grow up. That's why feelings and in other words, controlling your emotions through your feelings is related to maturity. And if you're not communicating your needs, your emotional states to other people, they can't react to them. And that causes them a problem, but it causes you two problems. Because internally you're building something up somewhere that's going to come out squirting out later, which ain't great. And you're not getting your emotional regulation from the other person, which you kind of need. We need each other for each other, right? We need people. We get our sanity from those around us. Sorry. Now, imagine, if you will, that you ignored your emotions or tried to repress them or push them down. And what you are left with is pure rationality with no additional signaling. Excuse me. Once you remove emotion from the world, the issue becomes a loss of signal, including a signal back to you. Your signal is gone too. You can't look back on the day and go, how did I feel about that? Accurately, if you're suppressing your emotions or if you're trying to make your feelings neutral or something. It's the same thing. And people are then lacking important details, including you. Things like the sarcasm becomes really difficult, and interacting with that person makes other people uncomfortable. Does it sound like autism to anyone? It's not, by the way, I would argue, but different live stream. If you want to see that live stream, comment below. Maybe I'll do it. The 9 causes of autism or something. Yeah, whatever. So being completely detached from your emotional state, or at least completely detaching the outside world through your feelings from your emotional state, is autistic. Indeed. This is why in severe cases, they just act out randomly, right? They get very upset at simple things. I remember I was dating this woman for a while, and she had a hot tub. Those are the hot tub days. I knew 4 people with hot tubs. It was a glorious time of my life. She had a little boy who was mostly okay most of the time, especially around me, because I'm this calming influence for whatever weird reason. We went to order dinner, and he was fine all day. He was great. He was great all day. Fantastic. Fantastic child to be around. We ordered dinner. He opened the dinner, and he just like melted down completely and instantaneously. And I was like, what the hell just happened? This kid's been fine all day. Well, obviously he wasn't. He just wasn't expressing it. And then one little thing happens where he had this vision in his head of what dinner was going to look like, and it turned out to be a casserole. And he didn't want a casserole, even though it was actually explained to him what he was going to get ahead of time. And then that was the end of him. Like for the rest of the day, he was wiped out. Yeah, well, he'd been suppressing his emotions all day and putting up with everything until, breakdown city, basically. Terrible. Terrible. So other folks will say, we'll find ways to express emotion that aren't as physical, right? So they have low affect, but the way they're expressing emotions is maybe confusion when they speak, uh, maybe precision when they do things like, a lot of people, when they get angry, they'll just go work on something really hard right in the moment, right? But they're not expressing that, uh, in any fashion that people are going to see. Like they run off. I'm angry, so I'm going to go be by myself, right? And sometimes you have to do that, right? But not often. I would say that's the problem. And still, other people have emotions, but they're random because they're not connected to what's going on around them, right? But something internal is happening, but they're not able to mediate it because they don't they don't know about feelings. They don't try to mediate anything, and they're not looking at it. They're just kind of ignoring their emotions, right? And it's all a mess, but it all looks similar. Does this sound or look at all like the autism spectrum or Asperger's or any of that stuff? What does a healthy set of feelings look like? If we can ask such a silly question. How can we use the interface of feeling to express emotions in a positive way? Aside from simple self reflection, like, why did I do that? And listen, you don't have to self reflect in the moment. I mean, maybe you can, or maybe, maybe that's okay, but generally not. Like, you should deal with the moment in the moment. Otherwise, you're not listening by definition, right? But it's quite useful indeed. It's a little self-referential, however, right? So you got to be careful with that. It's easy to get caught up in your own head about why you felt what you felt or whatever. What is it that we should look for, not only in ourselves, but like in other people, the people around us, hopefully, that signals a healthy balance between emotions and feelings? How do we sense, understand, come to know if people are emotionally stable, including ourselves? How do we interface with people in such a way that we get a sense for where they're at, which would tell us whether or not we can meet their needs? So let's just define passion as an honest expression of your emotions in the moment. Doesn't mean it can't be faked. Everything can be faked. Not a good argument. What you want to do is have control of that passion. In other words, tone it down or up, not repress, not hide, not try to ignore. I mean, this is a little tricky for people to understand, but when you meet a passionate person, or when you meet somebody you normally know and you invoke an interest of theirs that invokes some passion in them, there should be a little apprehension on your part if they're doing it correctly. You should get the intuition, the sense, the feeling from them. From them, you'll get their feeling. Yeah, you'll get a feeling from them that will impact your feelings and your emotions for sure, right? That they're very serious about whatever they're talking about. And if they're unsure about what they're talking about, they won't be very focused. They won't be very detailed. They won't be able to answer questions. Now, hopefully, if you've watched any of these live streams or any of my videos, uh, I'm very passionate. I'm very passionate about a lot of things, and they're very important to me. And that should scare you because I'm very serious about them. And if you get in my way, this is not going to be a good day for you. I'm not going to notice or care, by the way. So that's why you should be afraid of a passionate person. But you should also feel some comfort, unless they're scattered, which they could be, or unless they're over focused, which they could be, right? I must stop speech that I don't like at all costs. And all these people talk about censorship, and then when Charlie Kirk gets shot, they're partying. Well, I think I know how you feel about censorship. I know what you told me, but I also see your actions and I go, oh, oh, which one of these is not like the other? And which do I believe? Right? Oh, well, they're having this slightly angry censorship is bad, passionate moment. But saying censorship is bad in that way, the way I just did it, is not a good sign, man. I, I'm sorry. Now, now, censoring this particular book, we got to censor that particular book. That might be okay. So it depends on whether or not you agree with them or what grounds they're basing it on. Yeah, kind of important. But then being passionate enough to dance publicly and put it out on the internet for people to see in any way, shape, or form. At the death of somebody, yeah, they're passionate, all right. They're passionate about being evil. So that wasn't hard. Was that hard? Didn't seem hard. None of this seems hard. Very upsetting. Like, this isn't hard, guys. This is really easy, actually. You know who the bad guys are now? Can we just, oh, these are the guys who must believe in censorship, but only their own. So they're lying when they tell you otherwise. So you, if they say that, you shouldn't agree with them because they're nutbags and they don't mean it. So if you think you agree with them on censorship and that gives you something in common, you're a crazy person too. No, that didn't happen. They don't. It's a lie. It's just a lie. That's all. They're just lying. It's not hard. They're passionate in the wrong way, and there's a conflicting signal because they can't control their passions through their feelings. The way they feel is written all over their actions, everywhere, everything they do. They can't help but to reveal how they are. And then people want to make excuses for them. And I'm like, no, bro, you don't make excuses for that. First of all, that ain't your job. Period. End of statement. Full stop. Second of all, you're almost certainly wrong. Like, they're expressing how they feel. I get it. They're evil. I get it. Okay. Like, maybe we should just treat them the way they appear to want to be treated because they're clearly evil. That just seems a lot easier to me than making up a story about why, oh, well, they don't really mean it, or oh, this is temporary, or I can fix them. I can fix. No, you can't. You're a lunatic. And you shouldn't even try. It's not your responsibility. Who put you in charge? Nobody. Nobody. Reasonable, measured passion goes up and down appropriately. When somebody gets so drilled into something that they can't help but go off the deep end. And the next thing you know, they're calling for people to be imprisoned and people to be killed and blah, right? With no justification. They're just saying, and therefore, and therefore, and therefore, and therefore. And they're getting more and more worked up the further and further away they get from the issue. That's bad passion. But it's very revealing. So you can just count on that one. Oh, they're getting lost. That means they're showing how they really feel. Yes. Yes. You know what else? I mean, nothing else. It doesn't actually mean anything else. Do not redeem this behavior ever, ever, under any circumstances. No. Period. End of statement. See? Up and then down. None of that is written down, by the way, because I can't write that down and do it because it's not how it works. At least not for me. I wish. Listen, guys, if I could lie to people that well, I have a very different life. So I'm just going to let you know now. And one way that you deal with your passions, one way you channel this energy, these passions, is to invoke an appropriate memory. Perhaps why something matters to you so that you can communicate how much it matters to you and why if you know. And if you don't know why it matters to you, maybe you need to mediate through your feelings how you're expressing yourself on that topic. So if censorship matters to you and you're like, oh, this is the most important issue. We need to never censor anybody about anything ever, which no one believes, by the way. No one. Such a lie. Completely ridiculous. Uh, and we've been kind of doing that. It hasn't worked out, but I guess that's not enough of a signal for most people because they're retarded, I guess. I don't know. That something's wrong with them. Something. You would invoke your your memory. Why does this trigger me so much? Why does this censorship word cause so much emotion in me? If you can't identify that, that's a problem. You probably have a misplaced passion or an out of control emotion that needs to be mediated through your feelings. Stoically, what can I do about this? Nothing. Okay, maybe I should dampen my expressions because this isn't something I have any control over. Sure, the Ukraine war bad, the Iran war bad. All the wars nobody mentions that are going on in Africa right now also bad though. Like, hello? No, you've been ignoring those for decades. What kind of person does that make you? Oh, you want me to pay attention to this and this, but not these things. But they're all the same thing, by the way. War is bad. War's still bad. There might be a necessary evil sometimes or something akin to that, although I don't think it is. Um, but it's a constant. And you're directing me towards certain wars and away from certain others. So I ain't trusting you. Not on that topic. And oh, I had this outburst. I felt very passionate and I got lost in the moment, this morning on this topic. Why? Oh, I don't know. Whereas, look, you come on my Discord server anytime you want, that I'm there, and ask me, "Well, so Mark, why do you support censorship?" And I'll just tell you, bang, right off the bat. Like I'll just start listing why, and I'll have a conversation with you. But it might get heated depending upon how much you push back because I'm very passionate that people who say things like censorship is bad are lying and retarded, probably both at the same time. I'm just going to tell you, it's just how it is. Sorry. Nobody believes you should be allowed to say fire in a crowded theater. Like that's just not a thing that people do because they realize immediately the problems with that. Right? No, nobody believes we should get rid of libel and slander laws. And don't go saying, well, that's different. No, it ain't. It's not different. Sorry. But you can go back in your mind and figure out, oh, I wasn't in control in that moment. I wonder why. What emotion overtook me? It's always a good question. And the issue here that I'm getting at is that we tend to read passion as anger or arrogance or dangers. Could be dangerous. That person looks dangerous. They look pretty, out of control to me, even when they're not. And to be fair, if you have your feelings under control, passion makes you a monster. Jordan B. Peterson style, a monster. You're head and shoulders above the people around you at that point. And one oft misread type of passion is confidence. A lot of people misread confidence. They don't even know what it is. Or they get upset. Oh, that person's got confidence. Well, that just means you don't and you're weak and you ain't going to make it. I'm just going to say you're not going to make it. Okay? You're too weak. If confidence scares you, You're too weak. You better find someone to protect your ass. Because with confidence, you're signaling your internal certainty to others. You're willing to say, I am certain about this. Period. End of statement. Censorship is not bad, it's necessary. The question is, what kind? How do we implement it? How do we adjudicate it? And what is our basis for the censorship that we're employing? Those are the right questions. Everything else is wrong. Period. End of statement. This isn't that hard. And if you can back up that certainty, it's confidence. But if you can't back up that certainty, it's arrogance. So, what are the ways to tell the difference between those two things in particular? Buy a mug. So let's suppose you're talking to somebody and you go, "Hey, did you hear about the war in Iran?" And they go, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I read about that on the internet." You're like, "Cool." And they're one of your gamer friends and they're, your age, whatever, that, liberal arts degree or some other retarded useless thing from college. It's fine. It's fine. And they go, "Yeah, yeah, I know all about it. I read it on the internet." I'm like, "Oh, cool." And they go, "Yeah, yeah, I did a bunch of research and here's my opinion on Iran." Okay. And you go up to somebody else, same scenario, probably online, right? And you go, "Hey, did you hear about the Iran war?" And they go, "Oh yeah, I think I read something about the fact that there was a war in Iran on the internet." And you go, "Hey, well, what do you think?" And they go, "Well, I don't know. Never been there." They can say that with confidence. The other guy's arrogant. He's never been there. Doesn't know anything about war. What about this other guy? You ask him, and he goes, "Well, I have a real problem. I hope we don't put troops on the ground. It's pretty bad." But he was in the military deployed to Afghanistan. Well, I'd listen to that guy. I'd listen to the guy who said, "I don't know." I'd listen to him too. I believe him. "Oh, you don't know? Okay, you're not real confident about what you know about it." That's a style of I'm confident that I don't have enough information to have an opinion. Didn't think about that, did you? But that's a style of confidence. I'm confident that my limit is here and I can't get past it right now. Excellent. Excellent. Some other guy, "Oh yeah, I heard about the war in Iran on the internet. I didn't realize there was a war in Iran. But you know what? I'm Iranian, and we left 5 years ago because we saw this coming, and we knew there was a setup with the powers, right? And they just go on. Okay, well they can speak with confidence. That first idiot who read about it on the internet, overconfident in all cases. If you read about something on the internet, the only thing you are reliably is wrong. That's it. That's how the internet works. The internet is a gigantic way to be wrong about all kinds of things you have no business trying to understand, much less ability to understand. So there's ways to tell. The people that know what their engagement is and give the right level of detail to their experience, they know. They're confident. The guy who read about it on the internet is arrogant. That's all. And sure, he's got a leg up on 90% of the population that didn't bother to look up the history of Iran or something, or the history of wars in Iran, which there is a long, long history there too. But I mean, that's ridiculous. Oh, better than 90% of the people, so I must be pretty smart. No, that's not how that works at all. So what I'm trying to say is passion itself is not a good tell for anything in particular. right? It is just the aspect of your control over it that you need to worry about. What's the control you have over your emotions? Your your feelings can manifest as passion, right? Or those feelings can bring that passion down so that people know you're serious, but you're willing to negotiate. You're willing to have a conversation. When I'm telling you that only the severely retarded morons who you know are lying, because they have to be lying because it doesn't make any sense, don't want censorship, and you probably shouldn't listen to them. Don't try to talk to me and make your case. Wait until I calm down, which I will, because I want to hear the pushback, right? It's not to say I don't want to verbally slay you in a battle where I shall be gloriously victorious, because of course I always want that. That's fun. I've been like that my whole life. It's great. But also there's a time when people are ready to listen, and you can sense that. It's not merely the tone of their voice or their volume or any of that. It might be all of those things or some combination of them, and also their affect. People calm down, right? It's really interesting to watch when people do things like this. They try to get in your face, or when people are more like that. You can learn a lot about humans and their behavior by watching how they move. This is why Mark does not generally speed up videos when he's watching them, because he needs that visual signal. I also don't prefer podcasts because they slide right out of my brain sometimes. It takes a lot of energy for me to pay attention to a podcast. Complete garbage. So you can discern good passion versus dangerous passion, smoothly transitioning from high energy to calmness, doing so at the right time, matching what other people are doing to get along. These are good uses of feeling to mediate your emotions, which can manifest as more or less passion. These are all properly oriented desire in the right circumstances. In some circumstances, you can tell it's inappropriate to be that excited. So, for example, you go to a carnival, which I highly suggest you do, or a state fair or whatever. We go to the state fair here in South Carolina. It's lovely. You will invariably come up against some booth or whatever where they very excitedly want to talk to you about this wonderful new lens cleaner that they have. It's a new formulation. Maybe the last one I bought was purple. Totally totally bamboozled. I'm not immune to anything. I try real hard, but I ain't perfect. So, a little purple bottle. You know what's in the bottle? You know what's in the bottle? You know what brand new? It's alcohol, guys. It's alcohol. It's just alcohol. They're very excited to show you this new formulation of glass cleaner. Why? Why are they excited to show you a new formulation of eyeglass cleaner? Because they saw that you had glasses on, and they know one thing reliably: people don't clean their damn glasses, which means at any given moment in time, if you catch somebody with glasses, particularly if you know they've been outside for a while because they traveled from their house in their car and walked through the carnival to get to your booth, if you clean those glasses, it's going to look like a miracle. Period. End of statement. It's going to look like a miracle. So you can clean the glasses with regular alcohol, which they have at home, and they just never thought to clean it, or they didn't clean it before they left, or they cleaned it before they left, it's gotten dirty again, and they didn't notice because they're wearing the damn glasses. Their passion is just a little out of place. Like, oh, I really want to show you this brand new glass. Oh, okay, dude. Okay. I walk like a freaking autistic person through those things. Not all the time, because when I'm not being bothered, it's fine. But when I'm being bothered, it's eyes straight ahead, increase speed past booth. It's I'm kind of hysterical to watch, I would imagine, but I haven't seen myself do it, but I can imagine it's very funny from the outside. And I'm okay with that because it keeps me out of trouble. Although the purple glass cleaner I did nothing wrong. That's all I'm going to say about purple glass cleaner. Love my purple glass cleaner. It's just alcohol. It really is. So, what is the impact of these feelings in terms of orientation to the world? It's all about navigation, baby. It's all about orientation here. In order to orient in the world, you need 3 points outside yourself. So, that cannot be emotions or feelings because those are centered on you. So there's 2 problems here. One, they're in you or they're on just barely on the outside of you, right? But you're starting from yourself. Don't start from yourself. The world didn't start from you. Sorry. That's a shock to anybody. I don't apologize. You need the wake up call. Okay. And since you are not, at least the last I checked, the center of the universe, fairly sure that's me, by the way. Just saying. Can't be both of us. This is bad middle out way of thinking, right? It's a bad middle out way of thinking plan. Don't do that. It would also make you God. And I don't think you are. I'm just gonna, wild guess. I don't even need to meet you. I'm just gonna tell you right up front. I got my doubts. I don't think you're God. I'm just so, make of that what you will. Let's look at an improper orientation. You signal anger or resentment, and they often go together, right? So it's often both. At others in the world, people who aren't near you, like those greedy globalists or Elon Musk. How is that proper orientation? No, that oil company is building that pipeline. What? Do you live anywhere near the pipeline? No. Do you even know what states the pipeline is going through? Let's say you protest, so-called, in the streets to tell people who are not the object of your emotional state, nor are they the cause, what to do or not to do in the world. I need you to do this, sign that, or not to do this, or don't support that. Why? That pipeline's not near any of you people. And maybe it is near me, but why should I listen to somebody who doesn't live near me? Hello? How does that help? What do you think you're doing? Do you know? That's improper orientation of passion. If you're upset at the damn pipeline, you better have some damn connection to it. And if you're going to say, well, it's the earth and we all live on the earth, I'm just going to call you a lunatic and leave you alone, you psychopath. That goes for everything, including your anger and resentment, which you're putting out into the world and making it worse immediately with no hope of making a change. All you're doing at that point is trying to make other people resolve your emotional state for you. Well, I feel bad about this thing in the world, and if it were gone, my emotional state would be better. Oh, really? Well, I kind of doubt that. What evidence do I have? The kulaks. Jordan B. Peterson mentions this whole thing. That didn't make them any better. They kind of got what they wanted, but they were lazy. They didn't want to run a farm, and then everybody starves. Bonus. Wait. No, that's bad. Trying to get other people to resolve your problem for you, to help you feel better. What are you, a baby? Are you a baby? Do we have a maturity crisis in the United States in particular, or probably all of Europe too? Yeah, we do. Because people are doing that nonsense. Other people are not your mommy. And maybe your mommy wasn't a good mommy, and maybe that's why you're like this. I'm sorry to hear that. Also, don't put that on me, man. That ain't going to work. Guilt is another bad orientation in the world. Manipulating people by convincing them that you feel a certain way in order to get them to change how they feel, rather than being honest about how you feel and allowing them to express how they feel. In that case, you're revealing for the purpose of control rather than for the purpose of being your true and honest self, so that other people can hear what's going on with you. And then maybe because they're not you, they have a different perspective. Okay, scratch the maybe. They definitely have a different perspective because they're not you. Important to know. Important to know. Note that, write it down on something physically with a pen and paper. You don't want to be telling people that you're sad. And maybe you are sad unless you want them and they're able to listen to you. And there's always these transition periods where they're not able to listen to you. So you have to signal to them over and over again, kind of sad here, kind of sad here, kind of sad here, until they become interested, right? That people have to be, look, we're having maturity crisis. People have to be matured. That's going to suck and take time and be a total disaster in the beginning until it's not. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you about how humans grow up and mature, but like it's a mess. Anybody with kids should realize this immediately and then say, oh, wait, there's aspects of that still exist in the adult population, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and maybe older. I don't know. I mean, some people, some aspects of them have never matured. Seen that before. The important thing is when you can properly control your feelings, you have a sense, an intuition for if you might be going a little bit too far, right? You can back off to be safe. Oh, I'm acting out too much. I'm too angry about this. I feel too strongly about Gaia and coughing from the carbon emissions or some nonsense. These people are all nuts. I can't keep track of their craziness. And you can still signal what you need to signal without going too little or too much, right? And that, again, it's going to take some training, some learning, some experiments, and a lot of mistakes. Everything takes a lot of, you want to learn something, it's a lot of mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning anyway. You're just screwing yourself. It's fine by me. Also, don't waste your time or your energy or your attention. Save that for the monks. The man who knows how to use a sword, but never have to draw that sword, wins. That's the honest, honorable man. Perfectly capable, doesn't have to use his capability. Trained his whole life, never ends up using it. His confidence gets exemplified in the world. They see his sword and they see him never use it. And they go, wow, I can't believe he goes through his years without getting angry, but he's not using his sword. Huh, that's restraint. And that little story is the Western version of an Eastern saying because, listen, guys, there ain't nothing in the East that we don't have in the West. Honestly, nothing. Zero. It's just phrased differently. And if you didn't notice, maybe you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying, maybe don't look at the things in the East. If you think they're new and novel, maybe that just means you're ignoring that same signal in the West where it can be better conveyed to you. Because if you try to do Eastern thought, you're just going to misunderstand it. Geography of Thought, Nesbitt. Great book. So all of this is to say that emotions happen. What do you want to tell you? Like they're there and you're not getting around them because they're part of you, just like your skin. Feelings mediate, and how well you do that is a sign of your maturity as a person. We as a society, as a culture, have had a lot of bad formation. So most of the past 2 generations or so is likely just messed up with respect to maturity, particularly emotional maturity, whatever they're calling it this week. I don't care, right? Their ability to mediate their emotions through their feelings. Both directions, both directions. And that is most obvious with the confusing way we use the terms feelings and emotions. And this is what we all must work on. All of us, with each other, for each other. No choice. The ability to wield our emotions through feeling allows us to direct a passion towards the right thing. In other words, it's proper orientation. When we control our feelings, that barrier between internal emotions and external world, we become a properly oriented, passionate being that properly expresses what needs to be expressed in the moment, not with the emotion, not what emotion is bubbling up. And that makes you a monster. And this world is tough. You need to be a monster. And that, my friends, is all I have for you in the moment. I will be reading comments and catching up on that. Let me just get a little bit more organized since we're doing slightly new things and we haven't gotten used to it. Christopher, you have to feel your emotions, but you have some control over how you feel them. Right. Right. Sally, Joe, Cooper, you can take your hand off the hot stove. Master of feelings. Yes. Well, also, you need to mediate how you feel about it after you put your hand on the stove like an idiot. Um, RJ, I feel like feelings are misunderstood. Sally, well, don't like my skin either that much. Well, it's a different problem. And there is my Discord link. So if you want to join the Mark of Wisdom and discuss these sorts of topics, there it is. What is a need to be expressed parameter? Well, look, I mean, if you're angry at somebody, you need to let them know. Even if you don't know why you're angry, like you need to let them know that what they did angered you. Like that's not an optional thing. Like you have to do it. Uh, like maybe it's an accident, right? Maybe you don't know why and they don't know why, but you know what? Repeated exposure, that works. It's a sucky way to learn things, or so people think, but it's also the only way to learn things. So I don't know. I mean, it's not that bad if it's the only way. Uh, yeah. Why do you need to let them know? Because otherwise they're going to keep doing it and it's going to keep bubbling up in you and it'll just shoot through you and you'll have outbursts that you can't control for no reason and you won't know why. You'll be very confused. And it's like, oh, well, last week when you didn't let them know. Yeah. I mean, you got to have some kind of signal and you have to mediate that signal. So if somebody transgresses, so when I have the energy to do things and I'm doing things and I get a knock on the door, I'm not too happy. I've been that way my whole life. I do not like to be interrupted. Like if I'm reading, don't interrupt me. That's a bit absolute bad plan. Um, and you can't avoid getting interrupted while you're doing things. That's ridiculous. Right. So you have to have some mediation over how you express that you're, a little upset. Right. So the other person is aware, oh, maybe today I don't interrupt quite so much because unless it's important, right? Maybe some days this is not a big deal. And, the other person needs to interrupt you more and you're okay with it. You find a way to be okay with it or whatever. Right. They have to have that information or they can't change either. They can't give you feedback and say, oh, you're being ridiculous. You're getting upset for no reason, or oh, you're upset at something else. You're not upset at me. You're not upset at what I did, right? You'll never know that if you don't get feedback from the outside. Well, you can't get feedback from the outside. You can't get a reaction unless there's an action. So that's why. Like in your personal life, in public, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, all the time. If you're not feeding back, you just look autistic if you're not responding to things, right? And yeah, again, you have to mediate and you have to learn how to mediate it, and that sucks and it takes a long time. But you still have to do it. It's not going to go away. Things are just going to bubble up underneath the surface and then it's going to explode. And then you're not going to be able to control it. Like you have to practice control. All forms of control have to be practiced. Yeah, they're going to be themselves anyway. And they're never going to change if they don't get feedback. If you don't give people feedback, it's not even that they don't change, is that they get worse. Period. End of statement. Always. Entropy is real. If you don't give people feedback, they get worse. That's just what they do. Maybe the feedback never works, but maybe it keeps them stable, in which case, now it kind of did work. And that's the problem is, we're just, you know, without feedback, people are going to be themselves and they're never going to change. Totally true. That's why you need to make people's lives miserable sometimes. Otherwise, they don't get better, but they do sure as hell get worse because you can't keep yourself the same. You need, you outsource your sanity. You need that. There's no way around it. Oh, I should pin this link, huh? Before I forget. There we go. Now it's pinned. Thank you, Christopher. I thought it was a good point. Yeah, I mean, people are just not accounting for you're moving, entropy is working on you. Other people are moving, entropy is working on them. The fact that something doesn't work, we'll say immediately in the way you want to, doesn't mean it's not working. Feedback is important. Without signals coming from outside, you don't change ever, except for the worst. You can only get worse. This is why the hippie Jesus evangelicals are dangerous, because the, the reason why the left went insane and went woke and all this other nonsense and cheering the death of people while saying they don't believe in censorship. Well, I kind of think shooting somebody for talking to people is an extreme form of censorship. I don't know how other people feel about it, but if you feel any other way about it, you're retarded. You're an idiot. You're a moron. Okay, you can't think logically. That's the ultimate form of censorship: is shooting somebody for talking. Period. End of statement. What do we do? Nothing? Would not put them in jail? I guess. How do you think we got to that point? The left would not hold anybody accountable for anything. And so it got more and more extreme. And it wasn't everybody. Some people got kind of less extreme as they saw what happened to their friends, right? To the people that they trusted 3 minutes ago. Like, I get that, but it was the lack of feedback that caused that problem. They weren't willing to say, no, you can't do that. No, you shouldn't say things like that in public. No, you shouldn't feel that way even in private. If you don't tell people that, they're not going to know. If they don't get negative feedback, they're going to keep doing it over and over, and especially if it satisfies a need in them. And one of the needs that people have is the expression of their frustration, which typically, but not always, manifests in anger. I don't have that problem. My mediation method is very simple. I get ridiculously angry about stupid things that don't matter, and then it dissipates very fast. I make up things to get angry about that are dumb on purpose. That way, I can mediate my passion. I can understand, oh, this is what absurdity looks like, because I just do absurdity like 90% of my day anyway. If you've been on the Discord, you've heard that. You've seen me do that. I go completely nuts over the top. I'm worse not on the Discord, if you can imagine such a thing. It's true, though. I'll just make up little fantasies and get very upset about things that definitely aren't and couldn't ever happen. And, you know, I remember one day I was at my mom's house, and I was doing, it was an OCD day. I don't always have OCD days, but I have OCD days. And I was eating my food in a particular order on the plate. Very important. At the time, it was very important, I assure you. Vital. And my mother said, "Why are you doing that?" And I was like, "Why am I doing what?" And she's like, "Well, you're eating this and then that." And I'm like, "Because if I don't do that, the world will end." And my mother and I always had a good rapport back and forth anyway, right? And so she goes, "How do you know that?" And I said, "Well, I always do this and the world hasn't ended now, has it?" And then she lost her mind. She was laughing so hard. And I'm like, duh. And why did I get upset? I got upset because I didn't even know I was doing it, because sometimes I have an OCD day and that just happens to me. So I was upset when she questioned me. I'm like, but why did I do? Why am I doing that? I don't know. It must be important. How important is it? The entire universe must be wrapped up in this somehow. So I just told her that's what it was. It's completely. We had a blast. We had such a good laugh over that. It was great. You have to be able to do things like that because these things build up. All right, Sally Joe. Really makes you think about those people who go no contact. Yeah, well, the people who go no contact are spiraling into worse land. In every case, the fake news virus scam, you have to look at it as it was a giant experiment, just not in the ways people say it, because conspiracy theorists are all low IQ players. Sorry, I don't care what their actual IQ is. They're all cognitively stupid in a particular way, by the way, in a particular way. Maybe someday I'll go into that further. I do have some conspiracy videos up on the channel, but maybe I'll go into that more someday. So the people who went no contact, the people who socially distanced, which is evil, by the way, and not evil and not redeemable in any way, shape, or form. Try to redeem that to me. I'm going to know you're on Team Satan. I'm just telling you now, you're on Team Satan. Don't do that. Okay. The people who did social distancing and took that seriously, I'm not saying I didn't like not notice right away that it was evil, because I didn't. It, I had to go on Clubhouse to find that out. Um, those people got crazier when they came out of their caves. Some of them have never come out of their caves, right? So people who go no contact are just degrading because we outsource our sanity. And they're not outsourcing their sanity at all to anyone because they've gone no contact. And you can see the pattern. Like, you can just see, you can check it out right now. We're 6 years out. There's still people that are completely crazy because of fake news virus scam and the fake news flu shot and their paranoia. I mean, paranoia is not good for you. Sally Joe Cooper. Expression of anger is more taboo than most other expressions. Yeah, that's nice. Fuck off. Possibly connected to people not wanting to feel standard. They don't want to be judged negatively. And you know what? I'm completely dyslexic. I love negative feedback. I love it because I can learn from negative feedback. If somebody says, "Oh, Mark, the live stream was great," and I ask, sometimes I'm like, I'm looking for the, like, what did I miss? And they're like, "Oh no, this was great." I'm like, "Oh, come on. I must have missed something." Right? There's got to be something that was unclear. Right? So yeah, most people don't want the judgment because they don't want to get better. That's the bottom line. Because getting better sucks, because if you're better, it kind of highlights to you that you weren't all you could be before. And you usually don't know why. And sometimes, look, I mean, you were a baby and you weren't better then. You couldn't even go to the toilet. I mean, come on. Like, somebody had to change you. Ridiculous, right? So that's how it works. That's how it works. Yeah, on God, good to see you. Leaky bags of seawater does seem nautical. Well, ugly bags of mostly water is the line from Star Trek Next Generation. Um, Sally Joe Cooper. Demonizing anger is really an issue. Yeah, I know. I just tell people to get bent and they're not going to do anything about it. And I tell them that you're weak. You're not going to do anything about my anger. So why don't you just deal with it? And you know what? That actually works really well. They realize happy, fine. Anger upsets people. Good. It's supposed to upset them. That's the goal. It's supposed to upset them, right? Because they're in a groove and it's a bad groove and it needs to be upset. That's correct. Also, confidence and exuberance are ones that get people all offended. Yes, because confidence and exuberance negatively judge people without them, and that's too bad. Like I don't care. Like I'm sorry to hear you're weak and aren't gonna make it. Good luck, sucker. How's that? The no contact is usually adult kids who go no contact with their parents. Well, yeah, usually first, right? You cut off your closest. That's why all of this my generation betrayed me or the generation of my parents betrayed me nonsense is dangerous, right? Because all you're doing is you're identifying against all the bad things or perceived bad things that our generations don't do things, right? That's not things happen because of things within a generation, right? But they generations don't do things. Generations are an expression of a group based on a bunch of random criteria, mostly that are very hard to pin down correctly. So it's not helpful anyway because it's a bad frame. But when you set yourself against that, then you're not appreciating the good stuff. Oh, they passed this law. Well, yeah, but maybe that law is like everyone's all upset about age verification. I'm like, but most of these people are also upset about children having access to porn on the internet. I'm like, well, guess what, guys? you know, it's one or the other, actually. Like, either you do age verification and you make it a good one, or children are going to have access to porn on the internet. I hate to break it. Like, I don't, this is like why I don't believe there's no censorship. That's dumb. No one believes that. People may talk about that. They're liars. They're lying to themselves. They're stupid. Like they're not midwits. They're nitwits who think they're above midwits. Actually, they're nitwits. They're just dumb. Like they're just really, really low IQ. Like Andrew Wilson on trigonometry. I have a video coming out about that, by the way. They're just really dumb. Like they really can't put two and two. And I do mean two and two. Like, I mean, basic arithmetic is beyond these people. Absolutely beyond these people. Equivalency, they don't know what that is. They have no idea. None. It's sad to watch. It's sad to watch. But when you want to cut yourself off, particularly from whoever you're blaming for your problems, which all of your problems are partly your parents' fault. Thanks. You know who else that's true for though? Every other person ever, ever, all the persons, all of them. So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about you crying about the fact that the world exists outside of yourself? That's what we're talking about. It's the same thing, actually. Right? Are some parents worse than others? I should hope so. Otherwise, we'd all be the same. And wouldn't that suck? So, again, what are we talking about here? Are you going to fix the problem? Or are you going to whine about it all day? I got questions. Sally, that's most of there. I see it use the no contact. Well, yeah, look, I mean, if you don't want to be judged or feel judged, because maybe no one's judging you and you feel judged, that happens a lot, by the way. No one's judging them. They feel judged. They run away. Yeah, you run away. I mean, what choice do you have? I mean, gee, I can't imagine what causes the meaning crisis. I have to think on that. Right? You cut yourself off from the world because you don't want the judgment. And then, you go searching and, you find the abyss and you're like, aha, here's a place I can hide and cut myself off from the world. And then what happens? You stare into the abyss and it stares back at you. The problem is it's not the abyss staring back, you nitwit. It's God staring back because you can't get around the creation. You can try, but it still happened before you and it's still the thing that contains you and you can't get out of it. So that's really the problem, is that when you don't have an understanding of the fact that you can cut connections off, but ultimately if you don't replace those connections with something, um, at least as enriching, hopefully more enriching, then yeah, you're meaning crisis all day long. Like you're absolutely 100% meaning crisis. Yawn God. Kirk, ask Mark some good questions. Don't start with "Did you read?" Well, that's true. He should know better by now. I mean, maybe he never learns. I don't know. So sometimes it feels that way, but it doesn't really matter. What else we got? Or are we complete on our feelings? Have we? Do we feel complete with our feelings? People, those people always made me nuts. Uh-oh. Is Sally trolling me? Sally's trolling. The meaning crisis is caused by primordial domicile. It's weird. I know where you live. This is a dangerous game you're playing. Anyone who has individuated and integrated their shadow knows that you better hope I don't drive out to South Dakota anytime soon, Sally. That's all I have to say about that. Oh my goodness. So funny. Primordial domicide. Oh. Read the room, Sally. I'm gonna go see Read the Room guy. Oh my god. I can't wait for Symbolic World 2. It will be interesting. I don't plan on asking questions until I'm caught up. Well, I'll get caught up then. Um, yeah, I saw Jonathan Joe talk to Father Josiah Trenum, and that really sparked me up for Symbolic World. And then I heard him talk to on some channel, I forget which one, about his fairy tales. And so funny. The worst aspect of his Snow White story, uh, he was justifying it with, well, the postmodern critique is correct. And I was like, oh, how did you make this worse for me? That's amazing. And maybe he said that before and I like blacked it out because I should hope I would black that out. Anybody defending postmodernism in any way, shape, or form, or casting any form of not pure evilness into it. Like I can't deal with, like, it's so obvious. It's so freaking obvious. Sally, I feel like you are communicating annoyance. Me? Never. Christopher, Sally out of her lane again? Yes. Yeah, see, exactly. Oh, I forgot about this. See, I'm not in Discord mode, so I can't think about all these things. Otherwise I would have used that myself. Thank you, Christopher. Christopher helped quite a bit with the as did Sally, of course. But Christopher helped quite a bit with the monologue and got me unstuck without knowing it. Allowed me to finish the structure of the monologue, which is always important. And yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go tomorrow. We're getting on a plane in the afternoon, and we're flying, and we're gonna go see the Grand Canyon. Finally, I haven't seen it. Drove halfway around it, hadn't seen it. So I'm super excited. It's gonna be good to get out there again, and won't be staying in a box canyon this time, which, wow, was that awesome. Um, but I did it, so close enough. But yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool. Gonna be cool. I can't wait to I'll have to charge up the camera batteries and make sure they're ready. Sally, Joe, Cooper, going from not expressing to expressing seems fake, if not impossible. Well, it's required. Why does a person stop expressing anyway? Kids express first. Why do people quit expressing? Well, they quit expressing for a number of different reasons. So again, there's a trend with stoicism I would call it fake and gay stoicism because it's definitely not real. Um, and so people are taught like, oh, what Stoics do is they don't express their emotions, which is completely false. Um, and so they practice that, right? But what ends up happening, especially if you practice this yourself, right, with no feedback, you just end up looking autistic, right? And so why do a lot of people seem like they have Asperger's or autism or whatever? It's just because they're not expressing at all how they feel, right? That their feelings are hidden. And that causes outbursts no matter what it's caused from. Like it could be vaccine injury, right? It could be bad diet, it could be genetic mutation. I don't care. I don't care. Those are probably real but rare, super rare actually, 1% type stuff, right? Most people just seem like they have Asperger's or autism because they're repressing their feelings. Maybe their mother screamed at them every time they expressed any kind of emotion. She felt judged. I don't know. Like that happens. Um, Maybe expressing emotions was dangerous because you get hit. That happens to people, right? If you want to see an example of that, you can watch the movie Good Will Hunting, right? What did he do? He takes other people's emotional states, unwinds them in his head because he can for whatever freaking wackadoo reason, and then spits them back to the person. He just mirrors them. Boink, 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 right? And the journey through that movie is Will Hunting stops doing that and he starts expressing himself truthfully. I mean, there he is confronted with his girlfriend, and she's like, tell me you don't love me and I'll leave you alone. And he says, I don't love you with no emotion whatsoever. None. And it just freaking tears every time. I mean, not me, not me. I mean, most people, not me. I don't cry at movies. No, that never happens. Um, because you know it's a lie. You know it's a total lie. He doesn't know how to express himself. And because expressions were, I mean, I used to put these things out in front of me, and then he'd tell me to pick one for the beating for the night, right? And he turned it into a procedure. Like I'd always pick the most painful thing because F him. Well, fair enough. I turned it into a procedure so I didn't have to feel my feelings. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Do you know how else that manifests, by the way? Now, I know there's a DSM-4 and a DSM-5. Speaking of first books to burn on my list, those, the DSM-3 has multiple personality disorder, which is a better way to talk about it. Not dissociative personality. This is garbage. Stupid, stupid, stupid framework. Mind-numbingly stupid. People with multiple personality disorder are actually, according to literature, all over the place, entire books, repressing feelings and switching into a different personality to avoid those feelings. It's amazing to watch. I mean, I dated a girl like this, and it was just first person ever lied to me to my face, and I didn't notice. One of the only people ever to do that, because I can tell when people are lying. I can't tell how badly. Well, I can no, I can tell how badly they're lying. I can't always tell what they're lying about because it takes a lot of information. But I get there. But in the moment, you can't tell. But I can always tell when people are lying. I can always tell that, oh, that's not the whole truth. There's something else here, right? And then I just don't attack them for it because, yeah, sometimes people are just confused and their lies are not deliberate. They're not meant to manipulate. You know, they're just lying because they don't know, right? And fair enough. They don't have a good handle on themselves, and that's fine. And you know, without expressing yourself honestly in the moment, and no one can help you. You're trapped inside yourself and you're going to spiral down and into yourself. Some type of pattern navigation for sure. Yeah, you're navigating the pattern of comfort, right? What's the way to have comfort? Well, if the people around you aren't discomforted, then you're more comfortable than you would be otherwise. Sure, absolutely true, 100%. But neither of you can grow except entropy in a downward direction. So that might be bad. No, wait, that's definitely bad. I don't, that's not a might be. Christopher, expressing gets conflated with not controlling, right? And being ungrounded. Exactly. The difference is, are you able to mediate your passion? That's it. So if I get frustrated that you're not freaking getting it, you're definitely not. As long as I don't stay in this heightened state, and I said, but it looks like you're making progress. There's a contrast there. Why do we care about contrast? Because you need contrast to see. Passion, properly regulated, gives you contrast to see. That's why there's such a thing as a blinding passion. A crime of passion is a type of blinding passion that is unmediated. I couldn't see clearly, and so I killed the man in my passion because he was sleeping with my wife. Fair enough. Or I killed my wife and she was sleeping with that man. That's a crime of passion. What they mean is a crime of blinding passion. Proper passion is closer to something Italian romanticism, maybe, or the most passionate people also end up being quite violent sometimes, unfortunately, because they don't have, not everybody has well mediated passions. Anyone from a Spanish speaking country, right? They're hot blooded and passionate. Yes, that's how they're described. I'm not making anything up, right? I'm just looking at the way people are using the words and putting it in slightly better framing so that you can kind of see it, right? What if your anger is just crying? Well, then cry. Angry crying is too gross. Yeah, probably, but you still have to do it. And people don't even know what it means anyway. No, they don't, but they're not going to learn if they're not exposed to it. So it doesn't, I mean, yes, the state is bad. And if you do nothing about the bad state, it gets worse. Still not better, like still definitely worse, still bad or something. So I don't know what difference that makes. Zactron 1 2. Hey Kirk. On the subject of emotions, a reason I'm not the biggest fan of Buddhist thought is because, to my understanding, some schools of thought say you should suppress your emotions. I mean, in the West, maybe. I would just ignore everything from the East, especially as espoused by a Westerner or anybody who interpreted a book from its original language. Because if you read the geography of thought, you'll figure out really quickly there's no way that you have a chance in your life to understand Eastern thought as such, much less its numerous expressions and bad interpretations from Westerners. Like, that ain't ever gonna happen. And it's unnecessary. There's nothing new in Eastern thought that isn't also in Western thought. Nothing. It doesn't exist. It's just expressed differently, but in a way that seems mysterious to you because you're not an Easterner who thinks like an Easterner. Yanga, don't worry, you can always blame questionable stuff as a mistranslation. Well, that's true, but if you're in that situation, that just means you shouldn't be reading those books, which is still my position. I don't know why that position's so controversial when people don't understand things like Plato's Cave, which is not individualistic. Nothing in book 7 is individualistic. Book 7 is the refutation of individualism as such. Like the whole thing, not to mention the allegory itself, the whole thing. In fact, Plato dispenses with the individualism in the first book pretty handily, I might add. So, Sally, Joe, Cooper. I don't know, we were talking about ethnicity on feelings. Maybe I'm just mostly German. Suppress until a small genocide. I don't know. That's true. Well, different different people express things differently. I mean, uh, like I said, there's the Italians and the Spanish and the French, and and then there's the Brits who eat nothing but bland food, and the most exciting thing to them is the weather. So, I mean, different cultures are different, and different genotypes must have some impact on that. I don't know. It certainly seems that way to me, but you got to kind of get a handle on it because it's important. And that's another reason why generally you should kind of like stay within your own group, more than just your own ethnic group, by the way. Like, you really kind of should, because those people will be better able to regulate you because they're used to that type of person because they grew up around those types of persons. And they have models for, oh, that's how this is how my aunt deals with her husband who's, stoic or whatever, right? Cold weather peoples and repression go hand in hand. Well, yeah, to some extent, because you have to at least appear somewhat stoic. Someone's going to go out and chop the wood when it's, 10 degrees below zero. I haven't ever had to do that, but I've chopped wood in 0 degrees because we had to. That was great fun. But you're camping in the cabin in Vermont in the winter, and some idiot doesn't get their frickin' wood together ahead of time. It happens. I mean, move further north. Yes, I think about this. No, makes it worse. Um, yeah, the further north you move, the more suicide there is because they repress their emotions. They end up killing themselves. I don't know. This, by the way, is in the literature. I'm just telling you right now. If you actually look at the literature, you'll see it. It's like, oh, the further north you live, the more suicide you are. How lovely. I remember I had a good buddy of mine who was frequently depressed living in New England. He moved to Seattle. I don't know where he is. Maybe I should email him again. Last time I emailed him, I didn't hear back from him, but I did lose a couple of email addresses, so maybe he's been trying to get in touch with me and hasn't been able to. I don't know, but I hope he's all right because moving to Seattle was probably the wrong move for him. This is not the place to live if you're ever depressed, ever. You must be the most bubbly person on the planet, or you must never live in Seattle. And apparently, like 70 miles south of Seattle, it's fine. You don't have the dreary days. Like, actually, the rain and dreary days go away. And apparently, not too many miles north, too. Like, it's just that little valley, which is, typical. I grew up in the Merrimack Valley in, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, basically. So, along the Merrimack River, what do they call it? The Merrimack Valley. I don't know. Anyway, so one of the things about the Merrimack Valley is storms would actually get caught in the valley. And so everybody else would get these thunderstorms, they'd move through and they'd be gone. And yeah, it'd last 10, 15 minutes. Ours would last an hour and a half, 2 hours for real. And it was like, why is this like this? And where I'm living now, fascinating. Fascinating. So where I'm living now, this is wonderful. Storms to the north, storms to the south. And we do get storms, but they get twice as many storms to the north and south that we get. It's fantastic. I love it. I don't know why. Can't really work it out. It's not flat, but it's not like there's a ridge of mountains or something. Like, there's nothing obvious. I'm sure meteorologically there's a good explanation, and I can tell you why the weather patterns are what they are in most parts of New England because I studied weather when I lived up there. But I haven't studied any down here, and I don't really particularly have the desire to. So I will probably never know. But the key is that when you're not using your feelings to mediate your emotions to and from other people, you're going to have a problem. And those problems are going to get worse. and they're going to bubble up inside of you. And it may take years, but that's not better. But it is worse, so that's good to know. Sally, Joe, Cooper, I hate how impossible this whole expression of emotions accurately in the moment seems. It does. I mean, you got to do it until you get better at it. Right? It sounds like suddenly starting to speak French in a pleasant tone. Yeah, well, with those swooshy values, how possible? Yeah, well, I can't tell you how to express feelings. I can only refer you to all of my live streams, particularly my monologues. Or you can come on the Discord. You're already on the Discord all the time with me. Come on. Um, and you know, I go off on the frustration thing with the reality isn't real, existence doesn't exist all the time because that's what we're doing. Right? Yeah. I mean, there are impossible things, and they're not impossible because people are doing them, just not you. So it just means it's a skill that you can get, or at least a skill that you can improve, and that should be enough motivation to keep trying, right? Dismayed that's the feeling thinking about feelings causes. Well, yeah. Well, you're supposed to think about feelings as the mediator and how your mediation of your emotions has atrophied, and that's why you need to work on your feelings. And reflection is a great way to do it. Why did I act out? Why did I yell at that person? Why didn't I burst into tears when this happened? Right? Because now those people don't know. They don't know anything. I don't know. I could paint a large canvas of color fields. I don't know. How about that? Well, I mean, you can. I don't know what that would convey to anybody else. It might make you feel better, but that makes you worse. So I don't know. Do you want to be worse? I guess I can't stop you. Yeah, that's the problem with keeping things inside. And look, a lot of artists struggle with melancholy because when they express themselves, they do it through their art, and art is often misunderstood. And that makes them more upset because now they're expressing themselves in the best way they know how, in the clearest way they think they can. And still no one gets it. So they get more isolated, not less. And then they cut their ears off. And like Sarah the other day was having a, pain in one of her ears. And at first I said, well, you can't hear anyway. What difference does it make? Which she laughed at because she's very good natured in that way. Uh, and then I said, look, why don't we the ear hurts? We'll just cut it off and then it can't hurt anymore. And she goes, no, I don't want to be Van Gogh. And I said, well, you're a pianist, you're not a painter, so you wouldn't, but you'd be the Van Gogh of the keyboards. Like it'd be wonderful. And for some reason, she didn't go for that idea. So I don't. I'll try again. We'll see. We'll get her there eventually. And I use that because terribly emotive people, terribly responsive people, um, when you activate their response, it tells you a lot about how they're feeling in the moment. So, for example, if I make a joke about her ear hurting, I need to know how badly it hurts because some people are very bad at expressing the severity of their injuries, we'll say. And so if I make a joke about it and it doesn't get a laugh, then I get an idea that I need to pay more attention to it and not it's not a, oh, my ear hurts. It'll be better in 20 minutes. It's, oh, my ear hurts. I don't know why. And I'm starting to panic. Ah, okay. That tells me something, right? It tells me something super important. So that's why I use that methodology, right? Because it gives me a compass because people will, a lot of people will just act out for no reason. And it's like, well, do I need to take this seriously or should I just ignore this person so that they stop taking themselves too seriously? Because that's the thing. And you have to understand that. I just use my certain method to do it. So maybe you like my method, maybe you don't like my method. You should like my method. It's awesome. But whatever. I mean, it serves me, so kind of all I care about, to be quite honest. If other people can't use it, then sucks to be them, I guess. Doesn't suck to be me still, so I'm fine. So knowing and understanding that, in my opinion, is like that's fantastically important. That's not a little important, that's a lot important. So you have to have some way to kind of poke at and get at what people are feeling, like how what their internal emotional state is, how serious are things? Because maybe they're confused or they don't know, and you need to be able to know that. You need to be able to interact with them and sort of understand what that is so that you can help them. Because if you can't help them, they're going to get worse because that's what happens to people over time. Entropy is real. Sally Joe, expressing emotions is a relinquishing of control. No, it's not. It's exactly the opposite. Otherwise, they build up and they come out later. It may look like control in the moment, but it's not. It's nothing like that. You're completely out of control. And vulnerability that seemed really risky. Yeah, vulnerability is risky. That's true. Yep. Yep. I don't know what to tell you. You're at more risk when you repress because it's coming out. It's just going to be worse later. So, and a lot of people get depressed because they don't express their emotions, particularly their frustration with others, right? So if you're sitting back and you're talking to your parents and they make you feel bad and you never express that to them, a day later you might get sad. I mean, usually a lot of people, they don't know this about themselves. I've had to tell them, geez, dude, every time you have a conversation with your parents, the next day you're depressed. What? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just go pay attention. And they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, well, yeah. Do you ever tell them that you're not that they upset you when you're talking to them? Like, no, but they always upset me when I'm talking to them. Oh, okay. So they always upset you when you're talking to them, and the next day you're always depressed. Do you no? No, not two neurons to make a connection there, huh? And they're like, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." Like, maybe you want to do something about that. And a lot of people, particularly women, but not only women, also men, but particularly women, are like, "Oh my God, I told my mother that she upset me, and she didn't realize she was upsetting me, and I thought this whole time she was doing it on purpose." And I'm like, "Where have I heard this before?" Like, and then she said she's never gonna do that again, and, it's like, "Well, there you go." Like, now you're not gonna be depressed tomorrow. Like, problem solved. So, and some people will respond badly. "Why does that upset you? That shouldn't upset you." Blah, blah, blah. Well, look, then you get to make a decision. Like, do you let them calm down and try again? You better, right? You better not do a single sample on that. Um, you try 2 or 3 more times, yeah. And if it gets worse, do you cut them off? Maybe you have to. Like, a lot of people stay stuck in bad relationships of whatever type, friendships, marriages, whatever, because they avoid the conflict. And if they didn't avoid the conflict, it would have been easy for them to know to get out. So they stay trapped in a bad friendship or something for years because they avoided the conflict that would have told them, no, this person's never going to not be a psychopath towards you. Maybe they won't be a psychopath towards other people, but they're always going to be a psychopath towards you. And that's super important. Like, it's super duper important. But if there's no conflict, then you can't gauge those things. You can't gauge how dangerous somebody is if you're not having a conflict with them. Maybe they're violent. I knew a guy a billion years ago going freaking every once in a while I go, Mark, not having that person on this planet might have been a better idea. He was he got thrown out of the military. He was like 19 or 20 or something. I don't know. We were all young. And he was an actual misogynist, like you read about on 4chan, although this was way before 4chan existed. way before. And, like, he was actually like, "I hate women," right? And yet he was constantly trying to date them. And he may or may not have hit 1 or 2 of them. I don't know the whole story, so I'm not going to cast aspersions. Also, I wouldn't have taken the chance back then. Accidents happen. Accidents happen, and some people have accidents. I wasn't there. At least that's my story. That's happened before, so, people have accidents, right? Yeah, total jerk. And my buddy liked to drink with him, so they were like and I'm like, "Bro, just being around this guy," I mean, he constantly brings up how women are bad and, like, the worst sort of things you ever heard on the internet. He would say that in person to us, and I was just, like, staring at him like, "Are you trying to not breathe right now? Because I can make that happen for you pretty quick." Like, he was pretty sketchy. Fairly sure he went to jail, by the way. Um, those people are out there, and those women would be like, he hated women for real. He had a real problem, like an actual, like, you need to be locked up problem. Because he'd pursue them and he'd get them. For however he did that, I didn't understand then, and I don't understand now, and I'm not sure I wanna understand ever. I'm okay with that. But he'd just be horrible to them. And that was enjoyable to him or something somehow, I guess, apparently. I'd like to think that's impossible, but I was there and, I couldn't tell, and I can usually tell, but those women would never challenge it. They'd just placate him and placate him and placate him until he hit them, and then they'd leave, allegedly. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know if they actually got hit, but I'm gonna guess, based on the stories that, oh yeah, he hit them, you know? There might have been one he actually beat up too, like you hear stories. I don't know. I don't know of anybody he beat up. I know of women that he hit for sure though. And that was 4chan wasn't even a thought in anyone's mind. So it's not a new pattern, right? And of course we met him online and the ex-military didn't help, I'm sure. But those people exist. And if you don't challenge them early, then you'll stay stuck in that relationship way longer than you need to, right? And there's always a chance that if somebody had stood up to him, that he would have calmed down. I mean, I don't see how that would have been possible, but maybe. I mean, for less severe cases, that's certainly going to happen most of the time. Uh, thank goodness. But people would be in relationships with him, and I'm like, why is this woman still with him after he did all of these things? And it's like, well, because they don't challenge him and they're trying to make him comfortable, right? And it's like, why? Why? He's a scumbag. Like, I'll make him comfortable in a pine box. That sounds like the kind of comfort this guy needs. He's a total psychopath, completely off the rails. Um, so it's not a good situation. And he was getting support because, you know, he's my drinking buddy, and we're drinking together and just having a good time and macking on women, and I think it's really funny because he's so over the top about women, and I'm like, yeah, but he's serious. Like, he actually hits them. Like, why are you okay with talking like that? It was funny to him, and I'm like, oh, okay, but he was angry when he said that. Like, he was serious, and you're laughing. I don't know, man. Like, I don't it doesn't seem good to me. Seems like you're encouraging bad behavior at some point. So, when you don't mediate through feelings, you get people like that, and they get to do what they want in the world because everyone's trying to avoid making them angry or something. And it's like, you're not gonna avoid making him angry. He's a actual misogynist, like actual dyed in the wool we on the bulletin board systems, we had this little thing where, there was, I don't know if it was a year and a half, or 2 years, whatever, where we were all calling ourselves misogynists, right? And um, it was great fun. It's a big word. We're all, young, right? We're all teenagers, 17, 16, some of them, right? 18, whatever. We're all in that teenage range. And, we're almost all the people that were doing it had had a bad relationship. And so they're like, "No, I'm a misogynist. Leave me alone," right? As a signal online, because when you're typing on a keyboard on a bulletin board system, even in a live chat system, which is what we were doing, not a lot of expressiveness, right? And so how do you tell somebody to like back off? I'm damaged. Well, you just call yourself a misogynist. It works rather well, actually. And then the number of women that would fight for you, right? Like, oh, you're not a misogynist. You're okay. Freaking hysterical. So it's a great way to get attention online, as it turns out. Um, so this guy was actually like hatred of women, like really bad. And again, wouldn't avoid them, would attract them on purpose so that he could express his hatred. This is the worst combination ever. And those people are out there. And if you're a woman and you don't find out quick, you're going to stay stuck in that relationship far too long. So you have to express emotions. Like you have no choice. And yeah, if you're vulnerable around somebody who is like near you and they can't or don't protect you, that's important information that you need to know. You need to know that, right? Because maybe they can't, and that might be one type of problem. Okay, well, they can't protect me against this spider because they're too weak to kill a spider. So I have to kill all my own spiders. I have to figure out how to do that. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Or they don't realize they have to do that yet because they haven't seen a need, because you haven't expressed a need. And so they can't grow into that role. If 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 your friends don't see that you need help, we'll say regulating your alcohol consumption, then what do? They can't be your friends anymore if you're an alcoholic and they're going to drink around you. You can't. But maybe if they know that, they mediate their own drinking around you. And then it's better for everybody. But if you're not expressing this to them, how can they adjust? They can't make any adjustment. And that tells you immediately, oh, I express my feelings. Guys, I have a problem with alcohol. It's really hard for me when you're drinking around me. And then they go, oh, well, we can help you. We can make you less prone to drinking. That's something we can do. We can always have soda ready for you. We can offer you the soda up front before we get our drinks out, whatever. We can defer our drinking until you're gone. There's all kinds of things I've seen people do. And also, like, I don't drink. I've never, 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 never. Alcohol burns like fire. I don't know how anybody ever drinks any of it. You people are freaking completely insane to me, but whatever. I guess you're weird. I don't know. So I used to go to a lot of parties, particularly when I was online a lot, and they'd throw raucous. I mean, we had parties on the Air Force Base that were, may or may not have been quote sanctioned or allowed or whatever. Certainly against the rules. We'd have parties at people's houses. There'd be tons of people drinking, and they'd always try to get me to drink. Always, there'd be one or two people trying to get me to drink. Always, because there'd be like 12 alcoholics, and they can't deal with the judgment. And trying to get me to do anything is just some people are driven to fail. And so they try to get me to do something that I don't want to do. And I'm like, well, if you want to fail, that's a good way to do it. Pretty reliable. So we can go with that. And they typically wouldn't be able to get me to drink. Sometimes because I actually do a good sake and a good rum and coke. Every once in a while I'll have a sip, but only a sip because I don't drink. My buddy brought me sake back from Japan one year. And I think it took me 5 years to drink. It was a little tiny bottle. It's 5 years to drink it. Completely insane. Also not the right way to drink. Sake's better fresh. But yeah, I mean, you're taking it from Japan. It ain't gonna be fresh when it gets to me anyway. So people would express, their unmediated feelings that they were upset because I wasn't drinking and try to make me drink. That was their expression, which was fine. It didn't work. But if I was prone to peer pressure or something, which if you don't want to be prone to peer pressure, just realize you're above those little plebs. Peer pressure gone, they're not your peers. Tiny little people. Um, I'm joking, don't do that. You know, you don't want to be apart from people like that. Certainly not like that. That's not good. They hate that. Um, you want to be able to integrate it so that when they try to make you feel bad, they don't have that level of control, and you let them know they don't have that. Mostly they'd give up. They'd be like, "What?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." So what one time, my buddy Turtles called himself Turtles. Um, he was like, "Mark, you gotta drink." I mean, he was freaking smashed. It was a long all night party. We were staying over and everything. Even I was staying over. It was great. It was a fun time. There were 35 people there, or something insane. It was a nice big party. And he's like, Mark, you gotta drink. I made you a rum and coke. I'll make you a rum and coke. And I'm like, okay, dude, but like, do you know how to make a rum and coke? Because there's a correct ratio to do that with. And depending upon the type of rum, it's generally it depends on the type of rum, generally two-thirds, one-third, right? Uh, I think that's correct. If memory serves, it's two-thirds to one-third. And so he did it backwards and put so much freaking rum in it. And then I took one sip because I'm a polite person, right? So you put in effort, I got to do something. And then I said, bro, I can't drink this. And he said, what do you mean? And I'm like, you put too much rum in. And he goes, no, I didn't. And everybody, including all the other drunk people, were like, Turtles, bro, you put way too much rum in that. I was like, well, if the alcoholics think you put too much rum in it, bro, then you put too much rum in it, bro. Like this isn't a magical equation. It's really kind of straightforward math. If even the alcoholics are calling you out for too much rum, then too much rum it is. So he wasn't able to get me to drink the rum and coke. Again, I took a sip. It would be weird not to. But man, was holy crap. Thought I was gonna fall over just on the fumes. Um, if you don't express that and you just don't drink it, you get anger from the other person. I did this, you ignored it. Yeah, inappropriate, right? So take the sip, express the thing like, "Oh, I'm disappointed you didn't make this correctly. I warned you up front because I knew he was gonna screw it up because he was smashed. Smashed. Unbelievably smashed. Was slurring his words. It was bad. It was really bad. Which is why I couldn't stop him from getting me the damn drink. I'm like, "Dude, don't give me a drink. I don't drink. You know I don't drink. We've been over this before. This isn't gonna work." Right? "You're not gonna make it correctly." "Yes, I am." I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay." And he had nothing to say because everybody told him, "No, you didn't make that correct." Yeah, I gave it to somebody else, and they freaking. I'm like, Whatever, man. You do you, bro." But without that dance, without that back and forth, you have war. Basically, you have nothing but war and struggle. You have nothing but conflict. And if you don't mediate the conflict in the moment, you mediate it later. Only it's worse. And that's what people don't realize. Like, conflict is not optional in the world. You can mediate it now, or you can mediate it later and make it worse. It's up to you. Jordan Peterson talks about this, right, with relationships. He says, "Oh, no, no, no. If we had a problem, we would not go to bed until it was resolved." Like, oh, that's not a bad practice, right? And maybe you don't do it in the moment. Maybe you should. Maybe if you did, you wouldn't have to have Jordan Peterson's system. That might be something to think about. Um, and maybe you can't avoid that. So that's better than nothing, right? For sure. Um, but yeah, I mean, that has to get bled off slowly over time because if it builds up, it's bad. It's really bad. It affects your health. It affects all of your other relationships. It puts you in a bad spot because you find yourself bad mouthing your friend or your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, right? Or random people on the internet, right? A lot of frustration that you see on the internet is just guys who can't get dates. And that's why they're mad about the Iraq war. Like, seriously, that's actually all that's happening. I can't get a woman. I'm gonna be mad at the government. And look, they're imperfect. They did a war that they said they'd never do, which is a fantasy, by the way, but whatever. Said they'd never do. It's like, no. Oh, okay. You're in fantasy land and you're upset because you can't get a woman. Lovely. That's fantastic, right? And on the other side, a lot of women are like, never had a good relationship for whatever reason. Maybe they're attracted to the wrong guy. Maybe they express their emotions, and so they spiral into bad relationships pretty quickly. And then they act like my ex did this to me, and you're just like him, and blah, right, stuff like that. Um, yeah, that's bad relationships manifesting themselves because the pressure wasn't bled off slowly in the moment. So it's not like the pressure doesn't exist or conflicts don't happen. That's not the world you were born into. It's not the world you're ever going to live in or have lived in or will live in. It's not, that's not an option. So you have to deal with that. And feelings is the mediator for that. Sally, Joe, Cooper, sometimes you should sleep and then see where everyone is. Well, yeah, maybe sometimes, because sometimes you're just delirious tired. Well, maybe sometimes, but almost never. So, yeah, if you mean once a year, I sort of agree. But if the other person can't tell you that you're delirious tired, then they need to learn to be able to do that. And if they can't defend their own actions, maybe you're deliriously tired, but they were still wrong. And so who the hell cares? I don't know. Like that happens all the time. Ultimately, you got to understand signals as such are all about giving people information that they need to interact with you. And the fewer signals you give, the more unease there is. There may be comfort in the moment, but that's only in the moment. And if the comfort of one person is coming entirely at the expense of the other person, that's not going to end well. That's going to go poorly over time. Pretty reliably, as in always, 100%. And it's a problem. And some people never deal with their feelings, right? They have resentment towards a dead spouse, or they have resentment towards an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend, or they have resentment towards that job that they interviewed for and didn't get, like the drone missile job. I thought I was the lead candidate. They never called me back. I was super excited. I was like, "What? I get to work on that?" I mean, I even made the classic joke of, "Whoa, can I take them home? Like, can I get one of these shipped?" It was a remote job too. It was, what a beautiful job that would have been. It was so much fun. The pay was through the roof too. No, they didn't even call me back. I could be better about that, I guess. Why I even remember that, I don't know. I've been not called back on so many jobs. It's not worth thinking about. Um, that one in particular I mean, it was a really cool job. It would have been so much fun, and I really liked the VP I would have been working under. So, yeah, yeah, that's what is this dealing? In what context? I mean, you deal with things all the time. The question is, how do you deal with them? When somebody hands you a drink knowing you don't drink and they're sloshed, do you make it worse by not accepting the drink? Or do you deal with taking a sip of fire water that burns your mouth and makes you curse existence itself to be polite so that they don't go, because they're drunk, into a drunken rage? Because that's what causes drunken rages. It's not the only thing, but that's one of the things. So, yeah, you deal with that. But what you don't do is down the whole freaking thing when it's 2/3 rum and you don't like to drink. Like, you don't do that, right? That's the deal. The deal is I'll be minimally polite to you, and that's the best I'm going to do. That's a deal, right? It may be a sucky deal for the other person, at least according to their perception, but I don't care. Like, it's still the right deal for everybody. So sometimes you have to make other people get a sucky deal to make it the right deal for everyone. right. It just is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. And that's the problem. It's have to have the skill of the mediation, the feelings. You have to mediate your emotions in order to have these interactions with people that don't spiral into conflict constantly, which means when conflict happens, you have to deal with it in the moment. Christopher, deal clockwise and from the top of the deck. Yes. Yes. Well, and it's interesting, right? Because dealing a deck of cards is a form of mediation. That's what it is, right? If you're the dealer, you probably also shuffle. Sometimes you split that up. You're making a deal. We don't trust you. You put the cards down, but you can't shuffle them, right? And then you deal them out, and those are the cards you're dealt. That's what you got. It's a perfect analogy. Christopher's very good at that, by the way. Sally, Joe, Cooper, more like dealing with your own feelings. You're not going to be able to do that well. I don't know what to tell you. You need to learn how. Like when people say you have to deal with your feelings on that. Yeah, you do. Specifically past tense. Yeah, yeah, you do need to deal with your feelings on that. And sometimes the way you deal with your feelings is to call the other person a jerk. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I've had to tell people sometimes you're a real jerk. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, yeah, because you did this to me and that was inappropriate. And I was polite about it, but I'm not going to be polite the next time. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And sometimes they get cute. And what are you going to do to me? And I'm like, I don't know. How many days do you want to stay in the hospital? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty serious. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, maybe you were in the wrong. And like sometimes you're going to be in the wrong because sometimes we're all in the wrong. Like that's called Tuesday. That's not a special case. But you need to figure out what to do about that. Yeah. And that's not easy because it takes time and it takes sometimes another person, not just the person you're dealing with, right? Like you need contrast to see. The more contrast, the better. In some cases, you don't want higher contrast. You want more points of perspective so that you have some idea of what's going on. And the problem is we often get drilled down onto a specific instance and then we miss all the important details. Like, oh, this is the 15th time. Oh, well, that's different than if this is the first time. Because people do that all the time. They split things up and then they go, oh, well, if he hit you once, and he was drunk, then, maybe you forget. No, no, no. This is the 5th time he's been drunk and hit me. Oh, well, then you have to leave, right? Like this isn't that hard. There are 2 conditions and there are 2 answers here, right? So, because people make mistakes and things happen and things get misinterpreted, but also if you're going to talk about those things, you have to talk about them in the context of the timeline. Oh, this is a common pattern. Oh, okay. Well, you deal with common patterns differently than you deal with one-off mistakes. Of course, that's why we label them differently. So you have to be able to do that. And that's a skill that you have to develop over time with much pain to yourself because skills take pain. If you're not in pain, you're not learning. It's not that hard. And hopefully, if you're learning well, you don't feel the pain. Like you just get sore later and unhappy. That's okay. And that's the problem is when you don't deal with things, you lose the skill of dealing with things. Yeah. I haven't dealt a deck of cards in how many years? I would probably screw it up. I haven't shuffled cards in a while. I'd probably be very bad at it because you lose these skills when you don't practice them. This is why people got worse after the fake news virus scamdemic because they weren't practiced anymore at being around other people, at being polite, at implementing the rules of society, any rules of society. It doesn't matter what you conceive them to be, any set of rules of society. They just didn't know how to deal with them. And it's not like that was always the case. It just became the case. And that's the problem is when you don't practice things, your skills of them get worse and go down. It's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. And when you're hiding your emotions from people, unmediated through feelings, they either build up and explode later, but more importantly, the other person gets to thinking you don't have any. You don't have any problems. Everything's okay when everything isn't okay. And then they will make things worse without knowing it, for sure. But part of that's your responsibility at that point. And I just don't like having that responsibility. I'm like, no, I told you how I felt. You did it anyway. Here's the punishment. Can't whine at me about it. Right? That's just I like to put responsibility where it belongs. Whether people want that responsibility or not is irrelevant to me. I don't care enough to give them an out, right? And I don't do that with everything. There's certain things that's like, oh well, it's just the way it is with this person, and either you take the whole package or you get rid of the package. Like it's not that hard. So you know, you've got to weigh all that. And friendships can change over time. Any relationship can change over time. And so, my when I first met my buddy who drank too much, who was Irish, by the way, it wasn't a big deal. And then he drank more and more and more. And then when he was roommates with my other buddy, they would both just drink too much. And I was like, this sucks. You tried to throw me out of my apartment, which was laughable. I'm like, well, you guys aren't on the lease, so good luck with that. And then they went and got an apartment elsewhere. I'm like, well, goodbye. And then I didn't have, you know, 100 beer cans to take to recycling every week. Like they were drinking a lot. I was like, they weren't like that when I met them. That's for sure. So yeah, I mean, it was a problem. And then had to cut that relationship off. Like, bye-bye. Lost my other good friend though, at least for a little while, for like a couple of years. He didn't talk to me. I was like, well, he was also busy getting drunk all the time and not doing his research work. So I didn't feel bad. I'm like, well, kind of consequences for your drinking, I guess. And that's what happens. But I let them know, like, guys, you guys are like drinking too much. And they were, oh, well, no, we're not. That's ridiculous. I'm like, look at all the cans you have and bottles you have to bring to recycling. Like, that's not a hint? Really? This is a week. Like, what are you doing? Just count the I had none. There's only two of you. Like, this is easy math. Like, you go to freaking MIT. Like, you can't figure this out? Nope, he couldn't. Okay. But we want you to move out. I'm like, well, that's nice. And I want a Ferrari. But I ain't gonna win on the Ferrari, and you ain't gonna win on the me moving out. So see ya. They weren't too happy about that. My apartment in Brookline was awesome. It was the best apartment ever. It was the best possible apartment. I had on-street parking, which is illegal in Brookline, everywhere except on a private way, and we were on a private way. Uh, it was a good sized place. We had a full size eating kitchen with a chef stove. We had a dining room, a large dining room, and a large living room, and one very small bedroom, one small bedroom, and one medium sized bedroom. But it was enough. And if you walked across Route 9, which wasn't far, we're talking about one block, you were at the T stop. So you could get into Boston via subway, no problem. It was a very short walk. It wasn't, I don't even think it was a quarter mile or anything. Like it was right down the road. Little close to Route 9, obviously, right behind a BMW dealership, basically, but it was fairly quiet. And it was lovely. I miss that apartment all the time. But they had to move because they don't know how contracts work. And I was on the contract, and their names were nowhere on the contract. What smart person did that? MIT my ass. You take your MIT to do your math, and I still got the Brookline apartment, and you got nothing. Ha ha. You got to move to Somerville and walk to the damn bus. Sucker. Anyway, I'm not bitter. I'm glad they were totally out of control. But I let them know my feelings, and they let me know their feelings, and it didn't work out for them, and it worked out fine for me. I got roommates later on. I was able to afford that place by myself, actually, even though it was a 3-bedroom apartment in Brookline. It was a great deal. It was a really great deal. I do miss that place. I do. We're right on Route 9. You could drive up Route 9 and go to the expensive, fun grocery store in Newton, which wasn't bad. And that part of Brookline is just full of old mansions and stuff. It was nice. It was a nice place. I do miss it. If I was gonna live in Boston, that's the sort of or near Boston, that's the sort of place I'd live in. Just take the T into town and go to when I lived there, I could not find work in the city. All the work was out where I eventually lived up by Marlborough. So, when I lived in Marlborough, all the work was in the city. I was like, "What is happening? What is happening?" I was in the city for, like, 4 years, and I couldn't get one job in the city. And I move out of the city the minute I move out of the city, all the jobs are in the city. Not the minute my first job was between Marlborough and Boston. It was great, great, so many ways there. Traffic was not really as much of an issue. So, it made me feel good. Alright, been a while. Nobody loves me. They don't wanna come up and talk, which is fine. So, I'm gonna shut it down. I will not see you guys next week. I will release a video. It will be a dolled up monologue. And, I hope everybody has a great week and that you all survive me being gone, if such a thing is possible. And I want everybody to remember that the world needs you. So be better. It, it's not that hard, right? Ultimately, there's some way you can be better right now. I'm sure of it. A plus monologue. Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Work just runs away from Mark. I did this monologue at the last minute, largely. See you, Sally. Have a good night, everybody. Take care of yourselves and each other. And I will see you live in a couple of weeks. If you get anything in the meantime, put it down below. And, we'll see where it goes. Ciao.